let me ask you this. Can a beta become an alpha? Were you always an alpha male in your, by your approximation, or did you become an alpha over time? And then can a beta become an alpha, or do they just destined to die that way?
Yeah, so I've identified 4 archetypes. There's the unplugged alpha, the unplugged beta, and then there's a plugged in alpha and the plugged in beta. I didn't really spend much time considering this, in my past. It's just that through business, through dealing with my accountant, through dealing with my lawyers, through going through Entrepreneurs Org and sitting in business forums, I was always the guy that they always referenced to as the man's man. They would say things like, you're an alpha male, you don't put up with shit, garbage, whatever you want to call it. And I just never really thought much of it, right? But firstborns that had kind of a difficult upbringing, which I did, like my parents were strict. My dad was a Royal Air Force sergeant. There was no leeway with me, right? If I didn't have the car back by 10 o'clock, at 10:01, the car phone in my dad's Honda Accord was ringing. I don't know if you remember those old corded car phones from 1989, but it was ringing as like, why isn't my car home, sort of thing, right? So, when you grow up having a bit of a hard life with strict boundaries, you set high standards for yourself. You want to do more. You want to please, your parents. You want to get stuff out of life, sort of thing. And I've always said that, the world needs assholes, right? Like it's assholes that get things done. I'm not saying assholes in the sense where, you hurt people or that you intentionally go out of your way, but you don't give a lot of thought to pleasing or hurting people's feelings, which is a big thing, in today's world. Like I know that you've got the disclaimer at the start of the video, trying not to be offended, sort of thing. And I never really cared about offending people. But when I sort of went through this process of getting red pilled, myself and unplugging from society's comforting lies, that's when I sort of came up with the notion of, okay, this book that I'm writing, which I ended up titling The Unplugged Alpha, that is the most appropriate title for it, because when you consume this information and you adopt it and it becomes part of your life, it becomes the fabric of the man that you are, you will become the unplugged alpha. Like you will become that guy. So you can go from, subscribing to comforting lies to unsubscribing from them and putting yourself first, developing a strong masculine frame, adopting a lot of the tenets that I talk about. Yeah, you can certainly become an unplugged alpha, but I think most guys struggle with it, and they're probably not going to get there, because the vast majority of guys I've noticed that watch my content, and I started doing this the other day on my podcast whenever I launch it, is I now open with a disclaimer, and I'll tell people, like, look, if you think the government loves you, if you think that women can never do no harm and that they're sugar and spice and all things nice, this podcast ain't going to be for you, right? Like I'm going to unplug you from these types of comforting lies, sort of thing. So most people want to believe those comforting lies because it's easier than, dealing with the truth. It's easier to, sleepwalk through life and just go back to sleep than it is dealing with the discomforting reality of things.
Until it's not, right?
Yeah.
It's not easier. And that's really what I see, because I have a lot of friends. I consider myself an alpha, although, for the most part, I've always been in the driver's seat of my relationships, which actually wasn't great because I was bored, which I think, two people should be equals now. Meaning like that one can't say goodbye a lot easier than the other, because that's going to doom the relationship. But anyway, I see.
Yeah, I would disagree with that.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Let's talk about it.
I don't think that men and women can be equals in a relationship. There's a reason why there's only one steering wheel and one set of pedals in my McLaren, because there's only one area of the car that's set for the driver. There's a passenger seat. The passenger seat has value as well. I get involved in a lot of motorsports. I was just down in Baja, Mexico, doing some off-road racing in some challenge cars, and the navigator has very important roles. Extra eyes set on the road. They're on the radios talking to their cars. They're looking at the navigation. So you want complementary phrases. You don't want people equal. I don't think men and women are equal. I think that men and women can complement each other once they identify that there's a masculine role and there's a feminine role. Yeah. And a good woman can complement a man's life, right? If he makes the right choice when it comes to, choosing women.
Yeah, I guess where I was going with that, because I believe, what the Bible says, that the man is the head of the household. He needs to be the priest of his home, and he needs all, if the decision ultimately comes down to, if there's differing opinions, the man should make the decision. And I think that's what women want. They want to follow. They're going to try to lead. And if you let them, they'll resent you. I heard you talk about that. 100% true. But I'm talking about emotionally, where I was always in relationships with women that I was a lot less emotionally invested than they were. which caused me, even though I called the shots and, you know, I guess there was a certain level of security there, I was bored and I was always looking over my shoulder, wondering if I could be happier with the next one. So now it's like, I want somebody that I'm as into them as they're into me, I guess is what I meant.
Well, you want to choose women that choose you, right? You never want to be in a scenario where you've got more interest or you've invested in that relationship more than she has. I mean, to try to look for parity there, to say that, you know, like my desire is here and her desire is here, so it's exactly the same. I think you're going to have some difficulty, one, trying to evaluate that, and two, maintain that. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, complexities that come around with that. So what I advise to guys is just make sure, and there's an entire chapter about in my book on it on number 3, but make sure you deal with women that have genuine burning desire for you, because if you don't, you could end up being her second choice. You know, to say that you've both got to have the same emotional investment, I think leaves too many spots open. Like there's too many blind spots in it, because you're never going to have two people that have the same amount of desire in each other. And it changes over time. You know, it's going to increase for one person, it's maybe going to go down, it's going to increase, they might swap places, sort of thing. Yeah. But I think that if you're a guy and you're going to choose a woman, if you want to invite a woman in your life, especially if you're talking about something like having kids, you know, getting in a scenario like that is very high risk and low reward for a lot of men in today's environment. And it's low risk, high reward for women naturally, because they're hypergamous and they almost always marry across and up on the socioeconomic scale. So for guys, because I talk mostly to guys, like 90% of my audience is guys. For men, it's make sure that you choose women that choose you and that she's got genuine burning desire for you. Because the last thing you want to be, I get a lot of these requests and consults from guys. You don't want to be her second choice. You don't want to be the guy that's 35 years old, that wifed up to 32-year-old professional with degrees on her walls. She's a physician, a lawyer, an accountant, whatever like that. But she spent her 20s partying, going to university, running through a lot of guys. And now she's ready to get right with God and settle down, right? Because she's going to generally pick the beta male. She's going to pick the guy that's good enough. He's hopefully just tall enough. He's got just good enough genes, but his future's bright because he's got a good job. He's that engineer. He's got that STEM degree. He's making good money. So you definitely don't want to settle for a woman that only sees you as her second, third, fourth choice. You want to be her number one choice. And if you're not her number one choice, I advise guys to move on.
Yeah, I think it's great advice, actually, what you're saying. And after I watched your video, I went up and I made this TikTok reel where I went up to a whiteboard, and you're probably familiar with this, but 80% of the women are sleeping with 20% of the men right now. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
Right, okay. And I was like, you know, women say they don't want to be slut shamed. They don't want to hear that, you know, promiscuity is bad for them, you know, down the road or whatever. But I'm like, think about this. 80% of the women are sleeping with 20% of the men. What does that mean for the 80% of the men? They're not sleeping with anybody. Or if they are, it's the bottom 20%, right? Now, that's going to create problems because the men, they're sleeping with the alphas. I heard you talk about this. They're sleeping with the strong, rich, whatever, athletic men that are in the top 20%. But eventually they want to get married. So now they're going to come down to the 80%. And those 80% of guys haven't been getting laid for a long time. And And now they're a little resentful because you ran through all these guys up in the 20% and they were sleeping with 4 or 5 of you at the same time, or they had to be just for the math to work. And now you don't want me to have feelings about that. I'm like, look, I'm just the messenger. I'm not the one saying it, you know, it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I can see the writing's on the wall, and literally I was drawing it out, that it's going to create problems for you. So it's like I could totally see, you know, like how, you know, that 80% like of those men that, you know, betas, if you want to call them that, they get screwed over in the long run because the women that these 20% are sleeping with are some of their future wives. Obviously they have to be, and they are. Yep. I did this debate in LA a couple months ago where I debated this woman that was had her doctorate in sexual studies or something, and she was a proponent of of having sex before marriage, and she debated me on Nas Debates, this big YouTube channel. And I was just breaking it down. I'm like, look, think about it like this: if I'm in that 20% and I'm sleeping with multiple women, they're not my best yes. Maybe one of them is my best yes, but the others can't be my best yes, but they are someone else's best yes. That was their best yes, because I think that's what everyone is really looking for. Is I want to say my best yes. I want to get someone that I don't think I could have done any better with, and that's the person that I, you know, ultimately want to be with. Now, the only way for women to find out if they are really someone's best yes is to wait until marriage. Because if you are my best yes, you not having sex with me isn't going to scare me off. It will motivate me to man up and marry you, but it's not going to make me leave you, because if you're my best yes, I'll want it. I want the sex and I want everything that comes with it.
Yeah, that's a very difficult conversation though, because I mean, they've collected the data on this and it's very low. Like the percentage of women today that are getting involved with a guy on a long-term basis to raise a family that were virgins. Yeah. It's tiny percentage. I think it's less than 3%. Whereas, you know, back in the 40s and 50s, when they first started to collect the data, it was much higher. It was like well over 50%. Yeah. So it's like, you know, for guys today, you're going to really struggle to find a gal that hasn't been with guys before you. And I mean, whether it's 2 or it's 12, the data is pretty much the same. Like as soon as they're not a virgin, the chances of them forming a long-term pair bond, having a healthy long-term relationship, not getting divorced, not being depressed, not going on meds and things like that, they all go up dramatically after a couple of guys. Mm-hmm. So you've got a very, very small pool to deal with. So if you're a guy looking to find a gal that's like that, you need to be a super high value guy.
Yeah. And I'm not saying virgin necessarily either, but I definitely hear what you're saying to me. I guess, you know, if after a few guys the numbers play out to be the same pretty much, then that's the ideal.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here and pin down below in the top comment. You'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.